Let's study Parshat Bo with our commentator of the year, Rashi, and look closely at chapter 11, verse 4 of the book of Exodus. God has explained that during the night, every firstborn in the land of Egypt will be plagued, will die. And Moses is communicating to the Egyptians and says, this is what God explained. Vayomer Moshe, Ko Amar Adonai, Kachatzot halayla, Ani Yotzei B'toch Mitzrayim. At midnight, I will go out amidst Egypt. What catches Rashi's attention is what caught our sage's attention, and that is the kaf on the word chatzot. The word chatzot is a word that could mean midnight, but Rashi will point out that in fact, the Torah's use of the shoresh chet tzadi hey here, the word chatzot being derived from that root, is actually coming as part of a verb, which is constructed with the letter kaf, in this case, kachatzot. Like lachatzot would have been to cut in half. Here, the kaf comes to add further dimension to the verb when God would be cutting the night in half, when God cuts the night in half, to give it a sense both of time and action. So Rashi's first explanation is about this vocabulary, about this verb as opposed to it being a noun. And he's interested in explaining to us the grammar of Torah so that not only in this verse, but in other verses, we might be able to make some sense when we see a construct like this in the future. And we see this as part of his pedagogical plan, to teach people about the grammar. That was, in a sense, part of Rashi's milieu. At his time, new manuals of grammar were being produced, and the insights into biblical literature that one can derive using these points of grammar were very important to him, as they are to us today. And he really focused on that. And so he says, chatzot is not a noun. She'ein chatzot shem davar shel chatzi. It's not a noun that is the noun midnight. Rather, it's a verb that means when the night is divided. Kahei chalek halayla. In a wonderful Rashi fashion, he moves on to a different interpretive comment that brings a midrash into focus and explains Rabotenu darshuhu, our sages have explained, kamo kavachatzi halayla, as if it were at approximately midnight. Now, why would it be that Moses said approximately at midnight? V'amru she'amar Moshe kachatzot. Shemashma samuch lo. O lefanav, o la'acharav. Moses is the one who reported that it would be approximately midnight, maybe a little before, maybe a little bit afterwards. He didn't say lo amar bachatzot. Moses didn't say I will come at midnight, that God reported I will come at midnight. Rather, at about midnight. Now, God, of course, knows exactly when midnight is. Moses knows that God knows when midnight is, and most likely the Midrash here is suggesting that God said, I'll come at midnight. Moses adds the kaf, kachatzot, at about midnight. Why does Moses add this dimension? He is concerned, or he knows well enough that Pharaoh's astrologers who calculate the time might try to prove that in fact God is not the God of the universe because he didn't come at exactly the midnight that they had calculated. So Shema Yit'u Itstagnine Pharaoh. Lest Pharaoh's astrologers err in their calculation of the precise point of midnight and say, Vayomru Moshe Badaihu. Moshe is a liar. So if Moshe says Bachatzot at midnight, the astrologers of Pharaoh can come and say, look, he was wrong. He miscalculated. Given the fact that he was wrong about this, he must be wrong about everything else, and therefore he must be wrong about the God of Israel, and he would be suspect in the eyes of all of Egypt. Of course, we know that this is a major issue in our world. People take one of the small details that's stated incorrectly, or a mispronunciation, or a moment of misspeaking, and they amplify that. And they call into question the validity of information. They call into question the trustworthiness of a witness. They call into question the powerful ideas that leaders may have if they show that they were either wrong about one detail or another at this moment in time or about a moment in time, and they try to undermine the authority of both that leader and the righteousness of the ideas that that leader's trying to communicate. Moses, knowing his crowd well enough, shows very carefully the way that he was going to communicate this idea. And instead of saying Bachatzot, instead of saying it will be at midnight, he said Kachatzot, at about midnight, in order to let their focus remain on the profound news that God would be coming, this 10th plague would unfold, and they yet had a chance to let the people go before they brought destruction upon themselves. As we choose our words carefully and do so with sensitivity in order to communicate big ideas and ideals, let's also keep in mind that sometimes we might try to discredit the sources of inspiration and righteousness if just one little detail they tell us is not exactly on spot. And perhaps we should be more forgiving. And the Rashi, in that way, both explains the Torah and enriches our lives. Shabbat Shalom.